Hi, Randy from Gunworks. Tonight we're going to talk a little bit about how to change out the trigger bow in our pistols. It's a pretty popular do-it-yourself job. I would recommend, it's kind of an intermediate job. If you're pretty comfortable taking the gun apart and putting it back together, the lower end, then you can probably do this. But if you haven't taken it apart before, it might not be the best way to start learning that skill out, okay? I'm going to start with the disassembly, and if you just go up to the half cock notch, the safety pops out pretty good. See, I didn't have to put a lot of leverage on there. So I got my safeties out, pull my plunger out because I'll send that thing flying across the room in a few minutes, and then with the hammer down, I'm going to take my angle off. I will pop the grip panels out because I drop those around sometimes. Okay, so my beaver tail, my mainspring housing, sear spring, and then all the little parts inside. I really like using that little wrench to take those parts out. Okay, now I have to tackle the grip bushings. I really like this little stubby wrench for this job. Whoops. And then I get it out, backed out a little bit, and I'll give it a little tap to clear the Loctite off the bushing. Clear that side. Same thing on the other. Little tap. And those are out. Now the front grip screw bushings, these little boogers on the front, we use Loctite. We use red Loctite on one side and blue Loctite on the other. And it's not always the same side. It really depends on the assembler's preference when he puts them together. So I'm always careful when I start putting my wrenches in there. If I get any resistance at all, trying to take those out, I immediately go and get the heat gun and give them a little heat because I don't want to strip those. Those are a pain in the neck to get out. And this one's manageable. So there's one side. And then I usually just tap it out with my okay. So now I have to separate the grip. We fit these pretty tight, so make sure that you kind of work it off. You don't want to get hung up. I was hung up on the front bushing a little bit, so just be careful of that. And your little screwdriver to take your mag catch out. And I don't know about you guys, but I always forget which way to turn that. And then out comes the trigger bow. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to put in this medium or this short flat trigger. That's really what I see coming into the shop for requests here is short flats. I imagine that showing you how to do the short flats the best way to go. So when they come in the box, sometimes they're assembled like this and they're Loctited together. Never grab it from the back here and start turning on this stuff. If it's Loctited together, you can take this bow and actually bow it so it looks like a potato chip. And then when you go to put it in the pistol, it's going to cause you a problem. This one is on my bench. I've messed with it a few times, so it comes off pretty easy. Okay. I'm just going to take it all the way off just to talk about some stuff here. Okay. So on our trigger bow, you have the tabs here and here for your pre-travel adjustment. Make sure that those are not bent up. So if you had one of those tabs and it was bent up like this a little bit, it's going to make it hard to get the trigger shoe into the pistol. And then if you need over travel or need to adjust that pre-travel out, you would just push them forward a little bit. Make sure that you don't make them pop up though when you do that. Okay. So I'm going to back the over travel screw out of the trigger shoe a little bit so that it's flush on the back here. Okay. And then when I set these up in the shop, I use some Loctite on this post when I'm doing the final install. So I like to set the trigger shoe on the bow so that there's just like a rotation or so off from the trigger shoe. I don't know if you notice, but you see this piece of the trigger bow sticking out through the trigger, right? It looks terrible. It drives me crazy, so we're going to cut that off. When I'm in the shop, I can just walk over to the belt sander and grind that off. And I'm not sure how this is going to sound on the camera, but what I do is I use a cutting tool like this. Cut it back a little bit. I would dress that edge up. And then I go back to the trigger bow. And turn it back on. See how I'm holding the trigger bow in my hands? I'm not applying torque to it anywhere. I've got a really good neutral grip on it, and I can thread this on there without bending any of the parts. Okay. When I'm doing an install, I like to use a little Loctite on there. I usually use the blue, and it just helps it stay in position. You don't want to be wiggling around a lot. But for this install, we're just going to go dry, because I don't know if Adam's going to let me keep this blue trigger in his gun. So when I go to put it in the pistol, I have to make sure that the trigger shoe is, I call it plumb and square. If when I'm working on the trigger bow, I've bent that little screw, tightening it or loosening, or when I did the grinding or whatever, it makes it really hard to get the trigger in the proper position. So you can check for that by just putting it on a flat surface and checking if it runs parallel to that flat surface. I don't know if you can see what I got going on there, but and then I put it in the gun, and this is a gun that's been shot a bit, so there's a little burr on the back of the channel here. So I'm just going to take my file and just give right here and right here. Couple of little swipes, and this should just drop right in now. Straighten the trigger shoe out, and still have a little bit of a lip right there. If you're doing an install on a new pistol, this won't be a problem. But I think I've got Adam's practice gun here, so it's been shot a bit. Again, make sure that trigger shoe's straight. And there we go. Okay, so what I like to do for a test is I just throw my mag catch back in and I shake it. It needs to be able to shake back and forth like that freely. If it doesn't, you're gonna have a hard time with inconsistent trigger presses. So I'm happy with that. We'll lock the mag catch in. And there we go. And we'll start assembling the pistol back up. Grip goes on. When you're doing this install, you would use blue Loctite on all these bushings that I'm putting back in. Locate your bushings. And I kind of cheat. my bushing's not in the proper position on the inside. So I've grabbed it, and then what I do is I use the wrench to hold it, to turn it inside the grip, and then I give it a couple little shakes like that, and now I can tighten it up. You don't want to over tighten these, because you can damage them. So I'm just right now I've just snugged up, so I'm just going to give it just a little more turn. So just like a little more leverage after you get to that snugged up spot. It's the Loctite that holds everything in place, not necessarily your brute strength. Okay. This grip bushing back in. Go to snug here in a second. Okay, so I'm at snug. A little bit more. Good. Still got my shake going on. Everything's great. Front grip screw bushing. Okay. So on the side that comes apart, like on this side here, again, I would use that blue Loctite. Keep everything in place. And the purpose of this bushing is to lock the frame and the grip together. When you hold, you don't really have to over torque that either. It's not using like a fastening strength this way. It's just the bushing, and these screws hold the bushing in place. Okay. So on to the firing components. I like to put my sear and disconnector in together. And if you're new at this, just think this part touches the trigger bow, right? The flat part touches the trigger bow. That part touches the sear, or the hammer, so it goes in that way. Okay. Back to my handy little wrench here to slave the parts. In goes the pin. Next is the hammer. Hammer pin. Flop that up out of the way. Make sure the sear spring goes on top. You don't want to get that behind the components there. That'll be a pain in the neck to fix later. Mainspring housing. Drop the hammer strut into the mainspring housing. Beaver tail. Get my grip bushings in place. Or panels, there we go. Almost. Get those safeties on. Don't forget that detent. Pop the hammer back, and then using my little Atlas tool, I'm gonna depress the detent pin. Okay, all that stuff's looking pretty good. All right, so the next thing I need to do is adjust the over travel and pre-travel. So I need the top end for that. Here, let me show you a cool way to put this back together. Leave your recoil system compressed. Barrel link forward. Hold the gun upside down like this. Tuck that under. Leave that sticking out. Put your little tool in the hole, and then you can just pull the gun right back to that half cut, or the notch there where it goes through. You don't have to fight with the slide to get everything lined up, and you won't bugger up your gun. Okay, so pre-travel and over travel. With the hammer cocked back, that is perfect for me for pre-travel. And then the way I check for over travel is like this. I take my index finger and my thumb, and I control the trigger and I press it to the rear. And then once the hammer falls, I stop moving, and then I just watch to see how much the trigger moves afterwards. You need to have a little bit of trigger over travel or your parts won't reset. I have quite a bit. I don't know if you can see it on the camera. Do it one more time here. All right, now we're gonna continue moving to the rear. That's a lot. You can feel it when you press the trigger. So I'll take my little handy dandy wrench and I'm going to turn that bottom screw in. All right, so now I don't have any hammer fall because I've got that adjusted too far back. So what I'm going to do is now I'm going to come back one rotation on that screw. Still good, still back there. Do one more rotation on the screw. Hammer falls. Okay, check it again. I want just a bit more, so I'm going to give it like a half a turn. There. I don't know if you can see that on the camera, how much movement I have here. Let me look up. See that little bit of movement right there? That's about perfect.